I'm madly in love with her. I'm completely smitten. And it wasn't at a good level. Not at all. Every time she was gone, I thought about her. I used to sit on my couch and stare at my phone, waiting for her to text. Don't contact her, I'd tell myself. Don't. It will come across as overpowering. But I'd still find myself clicking her name on my contact list before my inner voice would say, you don't want her to know how much you adore her. It's unappealing. It will frighten her. No, you must wait until she calls you this time. But it was agonizing and exhausting. It's almost unbearable. I once heard that falling madly and irrationally in love with someone was a curse that you would wish on your enemies. I'd never figure out what they meant. After all, isn't falling head over heels in love nowadays the ultimate goal? But now that it's happened to me, I must admit that the ancient Greeks were correct. This is a calamity. I couldn't keep myself together. It was almost as if my obsession with her had possessed me. We were sexually active together but were still in the dating stage. We were at the point in a blossoming relationship where we'd either have the talk and formally be in a relationship, or we'd start to drift apart. The latter, I don't think I'd be able to handle. To be honest, I wouldn't be able to. Almost everything about her drew me in. When she laughed, she held her hand over her mouth. When she was scared, she'd caress the pendant of her necklace. When she was excited, she'd twirl her hair in her finger. Everything. Her odor. Her grin. Her gaze. Yes, I am aware. Reading about it probably makes you sick. I share your sentiments. I've never been the hopeless romantic type. But I can't stop thinking about her now. I'd remember us doing the 3-hour hike up to that breathtaking view on one of our first dates. To that first kiss, as we gazed out at the city lights. But this time I'd get down on one knee, pull out the ring, and... well, you can guess what happened next. Okay, that's fine. I'll stop now. Yes, this is a girl I'd only been dating casually for a few months. I shouldn't be considering proposing just yet. That I am aware of. I can barely keep myself together any longer. I feel like I'm losing control over the decisions I make. That brings me to the reason I'm sitting here writing this. It all started with the first real issue I had with her. We'd never spent the night together before. No matter how late she came over, as soon as either of us showed signs of exhaustion, she'd get up and leave. She would not leave awkwardly or angrily. Just a goodnight kiss, a smile, and a call me soon. It was something I didn't notice the first few times she did it, but it was getting strange after almost 8 weeks of dating. I'd have to inquire with her about it. It took nearly an entire bottle of wine for me to summon the courage to do it. When I asked, she looked almost defeated and lowered her eyes in embarrassment. I knew this conversation would come at some point, she began. She took a deep breath in and exhaled slowly. Recently. She paused once more. I've started talking to myself in my sleep. She blushed and shook her head. I looked it up, it's called somniloquy. I shrugged and burst out laughing. That's it? My demeanor seemed to say. No, Mark. Listen, she replied. She was not amused. It's bad. It has completely gotten out of hand. It's not just nonsense or random words. No. It's dreadful. I say horrible, repulsive things. She was starting to raise her voice, take deep breaths, and cry. I approached her and took her in my arms. I assured her that it couldn't be that bad. I invited her to stay the night. I told her she was most likely exaggerating. I was mistaken. She stayed at my house that night. But, before I fell asleep, she warned me of something. Don't wake me up, whatever you do. If that happens, I become very scared and disoriented. And don't bother responding to me. Simply ignore it. I agreed with a nod. If it gets too much, she added, just leave the room and sleep on the couch. I won't mind at all. I told her not to be concerned. I assured her that it would be no big deal. I told her I wasn't going to leave her on the couch. I'd stay in the bed with her. But I was mistaken. I couldn't even make it through one night. We both fell asleep peacefully. I'm not sure how many hours had passed, but I awoke in the dark with the feeling that someone was watching me. Then I remembered. She was there with me. She was in fact staying the night. I cracked a smile. But then I noticed her silhouette sitting up on the bed. She was staring at me. Staring. It frightened me. I'll be honest. Her stance was completely different. It was as if she wasn't even there. Then she said something. I wasn't hearing her voice. It was a lot lower and more gravelly. It's like something out of a horror film. I'll chew your skin off your bones, she stated. I froze. I just stared at her at first. This was not at all what I had anticipated. I expected it to be more like how Tourette's is frequently portrayed. Swearing and shouting at random. I honestly wondered, what will I do if she attacks me right now? What if she actually tries to chew the skin off my bones? But then she lied down and fell back asleep. I was terrified. I struggled to lie back down and ignore her. I couldn't even close my eyes without thinking, perhaps she's sitting up and staring at me again. And then I rolled over to look at her. And she was. Her face was pressed up against mine. Her breath was rotten and foul. Something that was uncharacteristic of her. She spoke once more, in the same tone as before. You'll be dead by morning if you don't move to the couch. That was enough for me. I sat up quickly and went to the living room. As I walked away, she made a wheezing sound. I believe it was intended to be laughter. I was lying on the couch, but I wasn't going to be able to sleep again. I was far too frightened. I was looking out the window, hoping to catch the first rays of the rising sun. Then I thought I overheard something. From the master bedroom. I paid attention. Then it happened again. Mark. It was the same gravelly, low voice. It sounded like a witch's voice. At first, I tried to ignore it. But then it went on. Mark. I remained silent. I know you're listening, Mark. You've awoken. Why don't you return to the bedroom? The voice was barely audible. Or perhaps you'd prefer that I come to you? I continued to remain silent. I was warned not to. But I paid attention. If I had heard her start walking towards the bedroom door, I would have run out of the apartment. However, she had asked that I not respond to her sleep talking. As a result, I didn't. And then I heard her again. I apologize if this interferes with your plans. She burst out laughing. You two were supposed to walk that trail again, she began. I had no idea what she was going to say next. You'd both be exhausted by the time you got to the top. You'd gaze out over the city. Then you'll get down on one knee and present the ring. She burst out laughing. That's when I realized it wasn't just a case of sleep talking. It was much more than that. Something supernatural has happened. I had never mentioned my proposal fantasies to anyone. There was no way she could have known anything about it. It was no longer just talking in one sleep. It was all about possession. I'm unable to return to my bedroom. I'm not sure what would happen if I did. Instead, I'm going to wait it out in my living room until the sun comes up. I still have a couple of hours. In the bedroom, I occasionally hear her laughing. Her voice is still not there. The same low-pitched cackle. But, as I sit here on my couch typing this, here's what scares me the most. Maybe my adoration and obsession with her was abnormal. I previously stated that I felt like I was losing control of myself. More so, I believe, than the typical love story. No. I'm afraid the infatuation I felt was the entity gradually gaining control of me. It was in charge of my thoughts, fears, ambitions, and anxieties. Perhaps a transfer would occur once I was completely absorbed, and she would be free of it. I know I should go. That I should open the front door, get into my car, and leave. But I'm afraid I can't. I can't abandon her. I'm already out of control. I'm madly in love with her. I'm completely smitten.